What's up, Desktopers? Xavier Wills here for Desktop Bodybuilding, and we are back with another video. And today I'm discussing, should Wesley Vissers have placed higher at the 2021 Portugal Pro in the Classic Physique? I discuss how Classic Physique is actually judged. I put him side by side with first and second place. I also show comparisons with Arnold and discuss whether Arnold was truly classic. And I discuss whether I think Wesley should make a move to open bodybuilding. So let's get straight into it. So I'll put a poll up last night. Literally what I said, the question I asked didn't actually make sense, but you guys actually understood it. Basically, where should Wesley Vissers have placed at the 2021 Portugal Pro? 37% of you said first, 40% said second, 16% said third, and then 8% of you said fourth or worse. So that makes up obviously 77% reckoned he should have placed higher than he did. 16% agreed with the placing, but 8% only agreed, but he should have been lower. So many of you fans, I did notice in the comments, were saying Wesley was ripped off, he should have placed higher. You know, Wesley is actually what Classic should be or is, and basically the other guys above him shouldn't have placed where they placed. So I found that pretty interesting. I mean, the winner, obviously, Jose Marie Biberi, I thought he looked fantastic as well. Obviously, second place looked fantastic as well, but were they truly classic? So let's get into it. So what is classic physique? So the definition of classic is judged over a period of time to be the highest quality and outstanding of its kind. So many people refer to that back to being, you know, the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Now, based on what would win on stage, obviously the guys in the 2000s and onwards would be winning. At least most people believe that. Maybe you can take some guys from the 90s like Dorian Yates and whatnot as well. But in terms of quality of physique, many believe the 90s and earlier were where the best quality physiques actually were before they sort of got too big and sort of blew out. And in classic physique, you're obviously restricted by height and weight. So if you're a certain height, you can only weigh a certain amount on stage. So this is more to avoid the guys getting too big and the class sort of getting out of hand, because we see now in figure and many of these other divisions, they tend to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's just a little bit each year. And then you sort of see the figure girls, and that's sort of what, you know, they're more muscular than the women's physique girls were at one point when that class first started. So it sort of evolves as it goes on. At some point, the judges need to be held responsible for actually reining it back in a little bit before these classes turn into sort of the next class. So I think it's actually smart they have a weight cap on classic physique. Whether they increase it or not, I think it's sort of a right spot right now. Many, obviously, the big guys believe it should be, you know, shouldn't matter and there shouldn't be a weight restriction, but it's going to turn into basically a huge dude, you know, almost Mr. Olympia standard in the open class, actually competing in classic physique just with nice lines. So I sort of don't want to see that, because I think the class will just get bigger and bigger. And the way it's sort of judged as well, sometimes almost like the guy with the smallest waist actually wins, even though they might not have the nicest shape and the nicest flow to their physique. I've noticed that a bit in the past, even when conditioning isn't much of a factor either way as well. But let me know what you think on how classic physique should be judged and how it is judged in the comments below. Now, there's always been debate whether Arnold Schwarzenegger was actually a classic physique, and Wesley Vissers really does resemble Arnold in many ways. Now, do they have identical physiques? No, but a lot of their poses, and especially the classic poses that Wesley hits in his routine, are very, very reminiscent or exact copies of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think it's very smart, because a lot of the classic poses that Arnold used to hit, Wesley hits them and he looks amazing in them. And I think that sort of makes him stand above some of these other classic physique competitors. I think he looks amazing. So you see here, this is obviously an iconic Arnold shot, and Wesley's hitting it absolutely awesome. He doesn't have the same peak on the bicep that he's flexing, obviously, but still, you see his front arm there and it looks absolutely huge. This one, obviously a variation of that as well, and often I think Arnold would hit this and then go into the other pose. And you can see here as well, Wesley Vissers is actually in better condition than Arnold. It's probably not the best lighting for Wesley, but you can see his glutes are in. Arnold never sort of had that detail, so Wesley is obviously in better condition. This shot obviously looks fantastic. I think it looks awesome. And actually, someone in the comments as well, under where I put this poll up, did say that he sort of poses for the cameras and not the judges as much. And he has to remember the judges are a little bit lower. So I just want to give a shout out to you as well. I believe that was actually Nick Chowardy. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong there. He says Wesley also needs to angle his posing down. You do not pose to the cameras, you pose to the judges that are below you. So actually a very, very good point there, because many people actually do pose upwards and the judges are looking up at you and you're sort of not seeing the right angle. So he may actually have a point there, and obviously each show is totally different. Sometimes the judges sit further back and they're tiered up, so they're sort of level with the competitors. Other shows, they're obviously, most shows actually, they're quite down low, but I think he looks absolutely amazing. He hits the Arnold shots very, very well, including that twisting back shot that you can see on the screen right now. But one pose that I don't think I saw Arnold actually hit, it's this one, the hand on the hip, sort of like half a lat spread, half a bicep pose. Wesley looks awesome on that. The way he's hitting it, he's sort of hitting it with a vacuum as well. Also, the way he's got his quad out, his quad actually looks like it has a really nice sweep there as well, which he sort of gets a little bit of a knock on. But I thought Wesley's legs were actually improved from the Olympia as well. And I thought this was probably his best or one of his best physiques that he's showed on stage to date. So I can definitely see the argument to why Wesley Vissers was actually robbed at this show, because he did place 11th at the Olympia, and you're saying obviously these two guys can be top 10 Olympian guys, and they can. Jose Marie Biri, I did pick him for a top 10 last year at the Olympia before he was actually obviously held out and wasn't able to get there because of the whole COVID situation. So I believe he would be top 10. Second place finisher, which is Geraman or whatever his name is, Pasta. I'm not sure if he would actually be top 10 in the Olympia. While he was shredded to the bone, I wasn't actually sure if he should have beat him. So let's put these two guys side by side. And what you can see here with the posing routine as well as they go through it, Wesley Vissers is super slow, super controlled. And that's what I really like to see, because you get to see him move very gracefully, and it's almost like an art form when you see Wesley posing. Now, German Pasta, now he poses really well as well, but it's a little bit quicker, it's a little bit rushed, it's not as smooth, and doesn't sort of lock out his poses and then just stay there. And I like to see guys really control their posing, and imagine like obviously there's someone taking photos as well, because then you actually hit the shot and you sort of hold it for a little bit. I feel like German is moving a little bit too much, which sort of distracts me a little bit from just actually looking at his physique and appreciating him when he gets into the poses. Now, he is shredded. He's got more sweeping quads. He's got a very, very small waist in comparison to Wesley. But I think Wesley's added enough muscle to the rest of his frame now where the width of his waist isn't near as much of an issue as it used to be. And also his sweep on his legs has come up as well. So I think that's much more even. So in this contest, I mean, judging obviously the conditioning, I have to give it to German, but I would say by physique and by what I believe classic physique is, I would have given this to Wesley over German. Now let's compare him to Jose Marie Bibri, and it's a very, very hard comparison because Jose is a much shorter bodybuilder. He's got really, really big round legs. So it's some very nice muscle bellies. Overall, I wouldn't say his physique flows as well as Wesley's does, even though he might have better muscle bellies, a smaller waist and everything like that. So it's a hard balance and hard to know how I would actually judge it if I was there in person. And obviously not being there in person, you can't see everything properly. I mean, being there in person gives a totally different perspective. I've seen shows that I've actually been at before, like pro bodybuilding contests, and then I've watched the video later and I've sort of had a different opinion. So it's very, very hard unless you're actually there. So I want to preface that as well. Now, Wesley Vissers, should he go to the open class? I interviewed him one day prior to Portugal, and here's what he had to say. But you mentioned obviously it's a little bit harder to make the weight limit this time around. Now, going to open, is that something that's in your future? How far away is it in your future? Is this something that you're just doing for the next year or two in classic and then you're going to take a year off and do open? What's your sort of plans, I suppose, you know, a couple of years down the track with that?
So a couple of years down the track, I might consider it. But first, I want to do my absolute best in this particular class, because this is what my passion is all about, classic physique, so classic bodybuilding, where the poses that I like to do that stand for classic bodybuilding are actually rewarded, and the presentation as well. Whereas in the open bodybuilding, that is less important. It's just more about the ultimate muscle size and conditioning, of course. And as long as that is okay, as long as you're the best, then you're going to win. But for classic physique, sometimes there can be differences in terms of how you present yourself and the way that you pose and the way that you are structured in terms of how classic you look. So I don't think I've brought my best yet at all. And every single time I do a show, I'm getting better and better. And until the moment comes where my weight limit is absolutely reached and I can't get any more conditioned and I'm not winning shows anymore, then I might consider moving on to another class, but I don't think that's going to be very soon.
So I think that's pretty smart by Wesley. He's actually, you know, prefacing, you know, whether he'll actually make the move to open based on how he does. He does have obviously aspirations of placing very high and winning an Olympia title in the classic physique. And he knows obviously to move to open pro bodybuilding, that would be many years away before he'd have a chance at even, you know, potentially being in the top 5 for a Mr. Olympia. And there's a lot of muscle to go. I mean, for him to be competitive in, you know, smaller open pro shows, he'd need at least 25 pounds of muscle, probably more, because he is a tall guy as well. Now, I think he's competing in the 240s right now. I'd say he'd have to be up around 270 for sure based on his height to be competitive. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Should Wesley Vissers make the move to the open? Should Wesley Vissers have placed higher at the Portugal Pro and maybe even won this show? Let me know what you think below. Also, I want to give another shout out in this video as well to Steve George, who commented under that poll that I put up. He said he could have been second. He said, one thing I hate in commentary about classic physique division is people thinking the goal is to look like physiques of yesteryear. And he said a bunch of other stuff as well, but that's a very good point as well. Should Classic Physique actually be judged based on the physiques of yesteryear? Should it just be basically aesthetics, like a Bob Paris, who is incredibly aesthetic, you know, probably the most aesthetic guy I've ever seen on the planet ever? Let me know what you think Classic Physique should actually be as well. So that's it for this video. If you guys like and appreciate this content, please give this video a thumbs up, smash that like button, also subscribe and hit the notification bell button. That way you'll be notified of every video that goes up for myself, Xavier Wills at Desktop Bodybuilding. So for Xavier Wills, Desktop Bodybuilding, we are out.